We got a nice big card here on a Friday in Major League Baseball. You want some winners heading into the weekend? Well, you're in the right place. It's First Pitch on WagerTalk TV. We're going to be breaking down damn near the whole slate here for you. If you're joining us live, make sure that you hit that like button, hit that subscribe as well. If you're watching us on the rewatch, it still stands. And I got Steve Merril and Tokyo Brandon with me today in the saddle, gentlemen. I'm pumped up for this one indeed. Tokyo, Brandon, we're going to start off with you. You were in nice and early. You and me, our pre-show chat, man, we got all kinds of winners just from chatting as we were getting ready to go on air here. You want to talk Nationals and Red Sox. So we'll start off there. How are you looking to bet this one, TB?
I do. So back in Japan, thanks for all the well wishes from everyone. Trip was great coming back. No problems. I do have a funny story. If we have time, I might share that about my trip back. But let's get into the baseball. We got the Nationals and Red Sox here. And this is one of those games where you want to either plug your nose or cover the logos of the teams. So this might be hard to hear. And Red Sox fans are some of the most annoying fan base, one of the most annoying fan bases in all of pro sports. But you guys are going to cry to hear this, but the Washington Nationals are actually a better team than the Red Sox. And here's my point. Washington Nationals batting is really good, actually. They rank 11 in Major League Baseball, according to my rankings. In my numbers, I have a specific way of ranking teams where the Red Sox rank 18 out of 30 teams. Look at bullpens. Washington Nationals have the number 5 bullpen in all of Major League Baseball, according to my numbers. And the Red Sox are 17. So starting pitcher, everybody knows Patrick Corbin is usually an auto fade. He's got a 6+ ERA. He's terrible. Tanner Houck has been pitching over his head. He's not as good as his numbers, but he is a serviceable good pitcher. I like the Nationals. I think the dog has a chance here, and the number is so high. I might even take like a small 1% flyer on the Nationals -1 or -1.5. Anytime you have the better hitter, the better lineup, and the much better bullpen, you have a shot to win, even if Patrick Corbin is your starter. So that's how I'm breaking this one down. Obviously, you look at the pitching matchup. The Red Sox have a huge advantage by a long margin. But like I said, anytime you have the better hitting team, and face it, the Nationals are just a better team than the Red Sox. They just are. Cover the logos and the numbers. You got to be honest with yourself and look yourself in the mirror sometimes. So I'm taking the Washington Nationals here, not on the money line, but I'm going to take a huge leap of faith here and take the Nationals -1. When I looked at it, it was +235. I think that's a great price. Nationals, if they win by 1, it's a push. If they win by 2, you get a huge payout. So that's how I'm approaching this game. But you can approach it any way you like. I just broke it down for you. So take a look at that game.
Wow, fading a 220 favorite there with the Red Sox. That's Tokyo Brandon, and bold strategy right out of the gate, just calling out all of Boston fandom. So I, as the Philly guy, will apologize to Boston on behalf of my man, Tokyo. Steve Merril, 1L. I mean, it's Patrick Corbin on the mound in that one for Washington, though. Like one of the chat's favorite things, and shout out to the chat FB coach Eric D. Titans CT Gooseballs in the house. We appreciate all you tuning in. But one of their favorite thing is yeah, exactly. I don't know if I want to see those, but Steve, like one of the favorite things, everybody hops in the chat and says it's fade Patrick Corbin day. So right out of the gate, Tokyo Brandon saying the Nats are the better team, even with Corbin on the bump. What's your thoughts on that game? Any thoughts, total side?
Well, we've talked a bit this week about my Washington Nationals, and all of a sudden they're off to a competitive start. You wouldn't think that 500 a month or so in would be excitement, but when you're as bad as Washington was last year, it's a victory. And I do think maybe they remain an underrated team, and they're 18-18, Red Sox 19-18. Of course, the Red Sox were the weakest team in that very competitive AL East last year. One thing I like now about the National League having a DH, one thing I like about everybody playing everybody is that we can compare apples to apples with stats. Back in the day when we'd have these interleague matchups, you'd have to bump up the National League numbers a little bit when it's in an American League park because they didn't have the benefit of a DH all year. And so I also like to look at road game numbers. And, of course, Fenway is a good reason to do that because it's a very unique ballpark. Boston's averaging about 5.5 runs a game on the road. Washington, 4.5. Boston is hitting about 250 on the road. DC only hitting about 233. Bullpens are pretty equal, though, overall this year. So these two teams are very equal. So on the surface, the only reason this line would be this big is because of the starting pitching matchup. Offense, bullpen's pretty equal.
Yeah.
No reason they should be a 2-1 favorite. So I do think that's more than priced in here, and I think it is overpriced for that reason. And I know Brandon's been following this for a long time. He was a scout for a while in MLB. When a guy is still in the rotation, there's a reason. Now, maybe the Nationals don't have anything else. That could be one of the reasons. But I think there's still something there. And if you look at Corbin's last 3 starts, a quality start in 2 of those 3. He had no runs in 5 innings and 3 runs in 6 innings. So I still think he has something left in the tank, and I think he can hold a mediocre Boston team in check.
Steve, the chat is lighting up. Wow, Tokyo, we got the glasses on and everything. You're just blocking out the haters.
I'm just
Isn't it nighttime in Tokyo? Isn't it like 3 a.m. out there?
Yes, it is. I'm going full blown douchebag here. Absolutely.
Douchebag. There you go.
It's not hard to be far off, TB. No offense, but no. That's to stick with our timely references we were having the other day. He's Corey Hart wearing his sunglasses at night. Steve, very timely shout out there. Appreciate everybody tuning in here. Even we even got over on the YouTube Shorts feed. Sports Center is tuning in, so even Sports Center knows this is the spot you want to be to get the betting information. If you haven't already, make sure you click that bell, throw us a like. We would greatly appreciate it. We got best bets coming your way on the show, rolling with plenty of your questions, including everyone who wants to talk about the Phillies. If there's anybody out there betting the Marlins tonight, please hop in the comments and let us know, because it's just been all Phillies here in the chat. Steve, we're going to get to that game in just a moment. But first, you brought up that you had a potential angle here on the Reds and the Giants. And this would typically be slated as a big game breakdown portion of the show. I don't know if we could put that billing on these two sides. Hey, good news for the Reds, Steve. At least they get to go on the road after their 0-6 homestand. So talk about two teams that can't hit anything. We're still seeing under money coming in this one. It was 7.5. It's down to 7. Is it that easy? You just take these guys who are swinging at everything and not contacting with anything and go under, or are you eyeing a little bit something as Webb and Abbott are against each other?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, we have not seen a 6.5 yet this year. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I don't recall seeing a 6.5 total. But this game is going to be the closest we get because, as you said, Dan, it's 7.5. It's now down to 7, but it's now 7 under -120. And, of course, we saw something very rare the last couple of days in Coors Field. We saw 3 straight games with a total of 10 or less, including 9 and 9.5 the last 2. And I can't recall the last time I've seen a total in the 9s at Coors Field in quite a while. So that tells you something about this San Francisco offense. Yet on the season, they're 18 and 19 to the under, 19 and 18 to the under, rather. 18 overs, 19 unders. And they did go over those last 2 at Coors Field with 14 and 10 runs total scored. Cincinnati's a very interesting team. I've talked about them quite often on the shows over the last couple of weeks. About a month ago, I thought they were a vastly overrated offense. And the reason I said that was they were averaging about 5.5 runs a game, but they were hitting in the low 200s for the season. And I'm a big believer that batting average wins out over runs scored. And that's why I like to look at hits. I like to look at offensive momentum when handicapping baseball. And they have come back down to earth. Their runs scored have been cut by about 20% since then. They're averaging just over 4.5 runs, under 4.5 runs a game now. They're batting 209 on the season, 202 on the road. And their road bullpen's been terrible, 5.5 ERA away from home this year with 44 innings pitched. So, yes, the Reds are not a good team right now. They were a phony team at the start. They've lost 8 straight games here. They now take to the road after losing 6 straight at home against Baltimore and Arizona. Maybe it's a wake-up call for them. Meanwhile, San Fran is in that tough spot of returning home off a 10-game road trip, Boston, Philly, and Colorado. So I really am not interested in either side. I would agree with the under here, under 7. I would have liked 7.5 better, but that's still a very key number. And these are 2 of the weakest offenses in baseball. My only concern, though, is that the Giants did start to hit the ball in Coors Field with 10, 13, and 7 hits. So maybe the Reds team total under would be the safest play here if you're looking for an exact play. Right now, checking the WagerTalk live odds screen, they're both at 3.5. I wish I was getting a 4. But once again, Reds team total under 3.5 would make sense. Game under 7. And I would lean San Fran if it wasn't for the fact they were coming home off the extended road trip. That's my main concern.
Yeah, we even had Goose here in the chat. I like Cincy here, but I can't get there with how bad they've been offensively. But Tokyo Brandon, I also don't want to lay 150 with San Francisco. So is there anything for you on the side here? Steve just touching upon that total. Seems kind of like if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of play. Anything on the side for you in this one? First 5 maybe?
Yeah, well, the Reds are interesting because they have one good player, and Webb has been amazing this year, though. So I definitely would not bet against him. Let me take a look real quick. Great TV when you're typing, but let me see. So yeah, I have both of these teams.
Just put the glasses back on. You'll be good, Tokyo Brandon. Just put the glasses back on.
I thought it was Tony Finn for a second.
There you go. There you go.
But yeah, I wouldn't fade Logan Webb. That's for sure. So if anything, I'd go with San Francisco here on the side, but I'm not going to bet that. It's too bad.
And Brandon, what's interesting, Brandon, is Webb's coming off a couple mediocre starts. He'd gone 7 innings or more, 4 straight starts, and then he's gone 4 and 3.5. So 2 ways to look at that, right? That he is probably going to bounce back if he is a quality starter, or is maybe something wrong there.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, go ahead.
Yeah, he was pitching a little over his head to start. I don't think he was that good.
A good point out here from our man Tyler in the chat. Really, the price I don't love, but if you want to kind of take both of what these guys are saying and find a play for it, he points out that Logan Webb, the earned runs allowed, it's 2.5. Like if you really think Cincinnati is going to suck that bad, you can't get 3 earned runs here on the starting pitcher. It's minus 140 though. So a play that just as far as a prop goes, and something that seems like right around a decent number. That's something that while it's intriguing, Steve, at the price made more sense.
He's given up 2 or less in 6 of his 7 starts, including that last start when he only went 5 innings. Wow. He still only gave up 2 earned runs. So it's happened in 6 of the 7. The only time it didn't was at Texas when he gave up 4. So I think that's actually a very good play. That would be my preferred way to play this. It's not something I dig into, and not every book's going to have that option, but he's done it in 6 of his 7 games.
Yeah, and just also it's not like 140 is. Go ahead, TV.
Oh, sorry. Just a quick rundown of my numbers. I have San Francisco the better batting, the better bullpen, and the better starting pitcher. So if I was forced to bet this game, I'd put a small play on the San Francisco Giants here.
Yeah, and maybe even look at lay the half run in the first 5 if you think San Francisco's bats will continue that streak up that Steve said. Hop below in the comments. Let us know how you're going to be betting that game. Great flag there by our man Tyler. Not on any Manea walks in the Mets game for people who have tuned in and saw that slip up that we've had before. He's eyeing that total runs. So hop below in the comments if you see anything else there in that Cincinnati Reds and San Francisco Giants game. Let's turn the page to maybe the one that has been the most popular here in the chat. And it was even before we went on air, guys, people were saying it's Phillies Day. Hey, they finally broke their losing streak. Ruzen was in the chat, though, when I put out the call for anybody betting the Marlins. He said, let me alt line the Marlins, minus 1.5. Get a crazy plus price on that. Sounds like he's a little pissed off that the Phillies ruined his winning streak that he had. Big favorite here, though, Steve, with Ranger Suarez on the bump. I have a play that I like in this one, but I want to get your guys' thoughts first. He's opposing Trevor Rogers, so it's an all-lefty affair, at least the probable starting pitchers. What we're seeing is Phillies are taking the trip down to play the Fish. What say you, Steve?
What did your Phillies start, Dan? Weren't they like 0-5, if I'm not mistaken? Is that right? They had a slow start.
Yeah,
right?
It wasn't great out of the gate. They were saying sell the team. They were saying, change the lineups. It was all bedlam as the Phillies. But yeah, it was a rough start to the year for them, and it's been screaming ever since.
I don't have it in front of me. I think it was 0-5, but that's they're 26-12. So that means they're 26-7 since if they did go 0-5, and I'll look it up. So this team has been lights out, and its momentum, obviously the trend is up still. And they're coming off a loss against Toronto. It was the second of the 2 games at home. It was also the end of a 6-game homestand. So I'm not going to read much into that. I like the fact they had yesterday off to travel. And I just can't trust Miami. Miami was a big play-on team for me last year. I had 3 teams I mentioned in my preseason videos. Rangers and Marlins were my 2 over teams from each league. I thought the D-backs would be better. The rule changes I thought would benefit all those type of teams. With that said, though, Miami was a phony playoff team last year. And boy, have they regressed this year, just 10-29. So only one way you're going to play it. You're going to lay it, in my opinion, with Philly.
Yeah, and that's what, as I was looking at this game, I was like, man, do I want to lay almost 2 bills with the Phils? No, I don't. But then you look at who the starting pitcher is, and sure, talk about we mentioned it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. When Suarez is on the hill for the Phils, it's set it and forget it. The guy gets the wins. He's 6-0 as a starter. He's gone deep. He's gone at least 6 innings in all of those games. So for me, it was -115 right before we came on. I locked it in at that. It's -120. I still like it. You're saving a price. If the Phillies get the win, it figures that Ranger Suarez goes deep in this game as he has in many of his outings. So if you want to save yourself, a good 70 cents there, Ranger Suarez to record the win. It's a way that I love betting some of these teams when they're big time favorites and we think their pitcher is going to go deep. I know that regression is probably due for Ranger Suarez, but until it is, this is something I've been betting. It's something I've been cashing with. So Ranger Suarez minus the 120 to record the win is the play for me, Steve.
I want to add a couple things. First of all, they were 2-4 to start, so I oversold your Phillies there. 2-4, very mediocre start. But the other thing I like about the Phillies here, Ralph Michaels sent this to all of us earlier this week. He did game by game, and I noticed that day by day how teams do. And Friday favorites do the best. And my logic there was that's almost always a game one. They don't overlook the opponent when they're better. Well, Ralph sent me an updated chart. The sweet spot for all road favorites, away favorites is game one of a series. Home favorites are negative, but away favorites have been positive since 2017. And if you take them over $1.50, it's the best angle of all any favorite situation is game one road favorites over $1.50 are 492 and 252, 66%. Average line 186, up over 36 units since 2017. And that's exactly the spot the Phillies are in. So once again, I would only lay it if you're going to play it.
And Brandon, in this one, and really a couple games across the board here, this one is definitely the most stark one when you look at the pitching matchup as far as the starting pitchers go, because you have a 6-0 pitcher against an 0-5 pitcher. So you have a most profitable pitcher versus a least profitable pitcher. Is this anything that would make you just think, hey, why not take everything out of it, look at the pitching matchup, and just go with the first 5 play? Because something that concerns me is when it seems this stark, it seems this obvious. I just don't want to pull off the rubber band on a play because it feels like it can't be that easy. But sometimes in baseball, it really is. Any thoughts on that, Brandon?
Interesting because, Steve brings up Ralph's angle. Steve had a great analysis there as well. And it seems like, every planet is aligning for the Phillies to win here. I like your play, Dan, actually. And if you look at Ranger Suarez, I was not a huge fan of his before the season, but he's been amazing. If you throw out his first start against the Braves, he's gone over 6 innings in every single start. I mean, he's an Iron Man. He's holding it down. His career numbers against Miami, pretty good. And, the Phillies have pretty much every advantage here. So yeah, I like him to record a win. Your play, it's a great angle. And if you really want to bet a big favorite, but you don't want to lay 2 bills, 2 ways that you can do it. Some books offer a 3-way money line. You can cut down 30 to 40 cents of juice that way, or a -1, which is a low risk alt run line, which means if they win by 1, you get your money back, and if they win by 2, you win. So it's a little less riskier than the common run line of -1.5. So those are 2 ways you can bet big favorites, not just in this game, but in other games as well. So we're on this show. We're not just giving you free plays, but we're also giving you some betting advice from professional bettors, and that's some advice I use when all the stars are aligning like a game like this.
Absolutely. We give you plays. We give you the free plays all show long here, but we also have the teach a man to fish angle that we go with here, where we love giving you a little insight in how some of these guys arrive at their numbers, how they arrive at their plays, and hopefully that stuff helps you. If you appreciate it, make sure you hit that like button, tell folks about it, and hit that little bell as well. Best bets coming here in just a few. Shout out to our man Simon Todd over on the YouTube short stream. He said, I put $3K on the Phillies money line. So we salute you. You know, this Philly homer wants you to cash that more than anything, brother. So best of luck to our man, Simon Todd. Brandon, a pitcher that you have definitely ISO'd in on and you've been making some cash betting on or against when the number makes sense is Brandon Pfaadt of the Arizona Diamondbacks. You were just in Arizona, so maybe you have a tight beeline on this one. He's opposing Cole Irvin tonight, and chat's kind of split on this one, how they want to bet it. Some folks saying they think there's some nice potential on a upset here for Arizona. And of course, we got our man Raven Ron saying O's run line. Let's ride. What do you think about this one? Baltimore and Arizona for you, TB.
Yeah, it's not an official play of mine, but if you look at Brandon Pfaadt, he actually has a pretty decent strikeout rate, and the Orioles, despite being a really good team, are one of the best or one of the highest strikeout rates in all of Major League Baseball. They're striking out more than 10 times per 9 innings. Pfaadt has right around a 9 per 9 strikeout rate. So even if he gets chased and has a poor game here, you can probably count on him getting some strikeouts. I don't have the strikeout prop memorized here, but I'm going to imagine it's 4.5. Definitely would take an over on that one. And if you look at he has zero history against the Orioles, and his last game he only got 4K, but the game before that against Seattle he got 11, and Seattle strikes out less than the Orioles. So you might be able to get a good 4.5 over here. 5.5 over might be a little steep because he probably is going to get chased in the 4th or 5th inning out of this one. But yeah, Pfaadt is a pretty decent strikeout guy, and he's facing the highest strikeout team in all of Major League Baseball today.
Any thoughts on that one for you, Steve? Before I have a question from our man FB Coach regarding a potential parlay, I want to ask you guys what might be the leg that busts it for him. But any thoughts on this one before we roll through a couple quick fire games?
Well, I thought what Brandon said was interesting about the strikeouts, and it's not a surprise. The Orioles, with all those strikeouts, are still 24-12 because they have the most home runs in the league, and they've actually played the fewest games in the league. In fact, the second and third place teams have played 3 more games than the Orioles, and the Orioles still have 57 home runs. So you live and die by the long ball. That's kind of what the Yankees have done. And that's when Judge went out of the lineup in recent years. They've been such a great play to the under and against. But it reminds me a little bit of the 3-point variance in college basketball is extreme. Even the NBA playoffs are seeing it, with the Celtics. So it makes the Orioles a little tricky for that reason. So I think the opposing pitchers, you want to look to maybe fade the Orioles when they're facing a ground ball pitcher, et cetera, things like that. I go back to Ralph's info, though, that on Fridays, favorites, the better teams usually win on Fridays, especially in game ones. It works best with road favorites, not as much with home favorites. But Baltimore, just like your Phillies, my Orioles, 24-12, not a team I'm looking to fade anytime soon. D-backs come in here traveling without rest. Baltimore returns home, but once again, they're at D.C., so it wasn't really a road trip. They played 3 in Cincy. They played 2 against the Nationals. I would assume they stayed at home. Maybe they stayed in a hotel in D.C., but you're still talking about like 40 minutes away. So it's not really much of a return home, especially with the day off yesterday.
Can I
That's
ask
the
Steve
thoughts there. Yeah, go ahead. You can ask whatever you want, Tokyo.
Why do you think it's Friday, Steve? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's game one.
I really, these days of the week thing, I really don't get.
No, it's interesting, Brandon. Ralph sent over, for all the viewers out there, Ralph kind of sent all of us a days of the week chart. And Brandon, I paid zero attention. I almost didn't even look at it because I was like, I don't think it matters. The reason I looked at it is because I've noticed Sundays have been more random than ever. And I think it makes a lot of sense because they play early. It's getaway day. So I wanted to see kind of maybe Thursdays. Yesterday was a small getaway card. But what was interesting, I noticed a lot of the favorites, especially the bigger favorites on Friday, were the most profitable. So I asked Ralph to send over a game number chart, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And as I said earlier, what really jumped out were favorites do well in game one, because my premise was that the better team is going to be focused in a new series. And we've seen teams beat up on the A's, especially road favorites at Oakland the last couple of years. They don't overlook the chance to beat up on a bad team. But after 3 or 4 games, sometimes, you take your foot off the gas, kind of like the Celtics did last night. And it lines up, because once again, the best angle are game one road favorites, and the bigger road favorites over $1.50 are the most profitable, which means the much better teams don't overlook the weaker teams in game one. And pretty much all Fridays are game one for the most part. So I think that's the only reason. I don't think it's necessarily a Friday thing. I think it's a game one thing.
Interesting. Okay.
That's Steve Merril, 2 R's, 1 L, WT.buzz/SM. And you can find Tokyo Brandon, WT.buzz/TB. You can get 11 days vol access for the price of 7. Shout out to my man over in the YouTube Shorts feed, Tragic Comedy, pointing out the dude talking, me, looks like the dude from Impractical Jokers. If you know, you know. I get the Brian like Quinn, the Q comp all the time. Yeah, that's I get that one all the time, Steve.
Yeah,
so hey, there are worse people. I can't pull any pranks on people out in public though, because people see it coming a mile away. But hop below in the comments. I got any other celeb lookalikes? Q, a strong entry there. Shout out to our man Tragic in the chat. Tragic look for me. FB Coach, loyal listener, loyal viewer here across the YouTube channel on WagerTalk. We appreciate you being a part of the WagerTalk family. He likes a potential parlay. The 3-team parlays have been real good to us, especially when Eric gives us cute names for them, like the triple C's and the triple P parlays. But the road favorite parlay is the play for our man FB Coach. He locked in the Bravos, the Phillies, and the Texas Rangers. Tokyo Brandon, any of those 3 feel like it might be the parlay buster, or does that one make sound like it makes a lot of sense to you?
Well, the Braves have 90-year-old Chad Morton on the mound, but he's been really solid so far, going against another 90-year-old in Jose Quintana. So I think Braves might be safe, a safe leg of that parlay. And looking at the Rangers, I typically, as a professional capper, our job is to predict the future, and that is the most unpredictable ballpark in all of MLB. So I auto cross out any games at Colorado. I never cap them. But looking at this, John Gray has been pretty good this season, and the Rangers have every edge over the Rockies here. Rockies are a really good home team. That's the only thing. Oh, well, actually, they're only 6-12 at home. It used to be where don't bet against the Rockies at home, bet against them on the road. But I guess they're just as horrible at home. So yeah, those 3 legs might be a fairly decent parlay. Parlays overall are kind of sucker bets though, because you don't get really good mathematical odds on them. So you might just want to bet those games 1-on-1 and make 3 bets. If you win 2 of them, you still cash. Whereas in a parlay, if you lose 1, you lose the whole ticket. So parlays are kind of sucker bets. I might stay away from a 3-leg parlay. But if you must, those 3 legs might be safe. TV.
Yeah, but let's be real, man. They're damn fun. They're damn fun, and the chat absolutely loves them. Yeah. Steve, as far as they go for you, what's your thoughts as far as the Astros, the Phillies, and the Rangers? Any of those seem a little too good to be true? Because we already talked the Phillies one at length. We're all kind of in agreement on that one. So since we're all in agreement on that one, maybe that's the one that'll slip us up for us. But, maybe the Astros, what do you think?
Yeah, I left the Phillies off my card for the reason you said. I've been doing this long enough, 30 years now, where it just seems too easy. So I fully get where you're coming from. And once again, I said, if you're going to play it, you got to lay it. But I'm not playing it because it does seem too obvious. With that said, the Friday big favorites dominate because they normally don't overlook them. So where I think Miami will probably get Phillies either on Saturday or most likely Sunday in the getaway game. the Colorado, excellent point by Brandon. I was going to say the same thing. You just never know with your first game in Coors Field. And something I forgot to mention, by the way, in that Reds-Giants breakdown, and this is another Ralph Michaels gem, teams that just played in Colorado are a negative play in their next game. The Giants would fit that subset, even though they have a day off. And what I like about it isn't necessarily the baseball angle. Ralph has run that in the NBA with the Nuggets. He's run it in the NFL with the Broncos. Teams playing their next game after playing any of those teams in multiple sports are a negative play. I thought that was fascinating. It shows that the altitude is a real thing. So I think that's kind of the random game as well. And just my big thoughts on parlays in general, I've always said this, you're not changing the math. And that's Brandon's point as well.
Fair.
The only point I will say about a parlay is from a risk-reward perspective, it is better because you're risking less. From a money management perspective, maybe it's a little bit better. But the other thing is you got to decide if you're a serious investor or if you're playing for action and fun. If you're taking a serious investment approach like I do, then I'm not using parlays because mathematically you're not changing the math. But most viewers out there, let's be realistic, most of them are playing for fun, and there is nothing wrong with that. And that's the purpose of these shows, is to help you handicap. So have some fun with the 3-team parlay, and doing the road favorites on Friday night, as we just touched upon, is a long-term winning angle. So not a bad way to do it tonight.
Totally agree. And I was going to say the same thing. You have to decide if you're doing this for fun or if you're in this for the long haul to make a profit. So if you want to have fun and go have a beer with your friends, do your 3-leg parlay. But if you're doing this 10 years from now, if you want to be profitable, those are the kind of bets you probably should avoid.
Yeah, and to your point too, Brandon, is when people partner up with you guys, check our cappers out over at WagerTalk.com. Very rarely are you going to have some of these professional bettors releasing to you, hey, here's the 3-team parlay that I'm betting tonight. But I will say, for recreational bettors who like having fun, who like partnering with our guys as well, if your bankroll allows for it, bet the suggestions straight and then save a little bit on that back end for, you throw $5 in on the parlay. And then, hey, if all 3 of them hit, you have a hell of a good night. If 2 of them hit, you have that little tiny sprinkle. That's where you really can use it as a money-making tool, as these guys kind of point out. And when go ahead, Steve.
Well, so it's funny. You made me think of something that Teddy Covers has talked about for decades, and I talked about it 2 decades ago. The one-time Teddy, who's obviously a serious long-term investor, right? And he's not an action guy. He's not a fun. Teddy, I believe, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, he still, when he has underdogs in the NFL, he still makes money line parlays with those dogs. And now I think he round robins them all into 2-team parlays, which is what I recommend. He might do a 3, but how ironic is it? We're talking always about money line parlays. Everybody is parlaying down big favorites. Teddy, who's a full-time professional, is actually doing the dogs. And it's because in the NFL, underdogs that covered normally win outright. About 70 to 80% of the time, when they're less than a touchdown, they win outright. So I've always recommended putting part of your underdog on a money line, in whether the NBA or the NFL. And Teddy, I believe, still does that. He parlays them. So we're talking about big favorites. But the one thing sharps actually do are those plus money, because once again, from a risk-reward perspective, you can get a tremendous payoff if you hit a couple of those, 4-1, you've got them parlayed together. Very little risk for big reward.
Yeah, and especially when you're talking in point spread sports. I know we're talking baseball here, obviously, right, but final thing that I'll have on this is, if you like a dog, that handicap better get you on a situation where that dog can win outright. So take last night, what happened with the Cleveland Cavaliers is a perfect example. Yeah. Sure, you can take the points and you're feeling good. You sprinkle on that money line too. You break up your bet, 3/4 or 3/4 on the spread, and then sprinkle a little bit on that money line. Then you get bragging rights with your buddies, which is why we love parlays, and you get an extra little bonus. But even if one of those hit, you were going to be having a good night. So there's so many different ways to tackle it, but I think Tragic says it the best. And no, not just me looking like Q. He says tragic comedy, losing money is not entertaining. So whether you're having fun with them, whether you're not, all of us are in this to make a buck. So, you have to find what works for you in that one. Terrific stuff there, guys. Fascinating stuff. Hop below in the comments and let us know your approach to finding some plus money on the slate. And speaking of some action and some plus money, let's talk some best bets here. Tokyo, Brandon, Ray Charles with the glasses. Hopefully you can see some winners on the board here tonight. You want to talk Angels and Royals, one of your favorite approaches that's helped you get to being the number one capper in baseball this year, number one all sports capper. Some of these player props. What do you got here for the folks, TB?
Well, we were talking about those dog 3-leg parlay. If you can hit an underdog 3-leg money line parlay, you can wear glasses like this and be a douchebag to your friends. So let me take the glasses off. So yes, thanks for the intro. I have a 5% play out today in Major League Baseball that you can grab at my page at WagerTalk.com. Yeah, like Dan said, I'm number one in Major League Baseball profit so far in 2024. All sports, number one profit in 2024, 2022, and 2021. So grab my 5% play today in Major League Baseball. Best bet for the show today. I am going to a pitcher prop in the Angels Royals game. So interesting that I've noticed doing props in Major League Baseball this season is when a team has basically when you find a bad team, bookmakers have to make the line in a certain way that is disadvantageous to that team. But just because a team sucks does not mean that they strike out a lot. And the Angels absolutely suck. There's no doubt about it. Even with Mike Trout, they suck. But they suck even worse without him. And we've got the Angels without Mike Trout. Now, Alec Marsh has been a decent pitcher this season. So this is exactly the kind of situation that the bookmakers will put out a number because they have to, not because they want to. But the Alec Marsh strikeout prop is 4.5 over under. And if you look at Alec Marsh, he is not a big strikeout pitcher, as a matter of fact. He's actually only striking out less than 6 batters per 9 innings. And if you look at the Angels, they're not a big strikeout team either. They're only striking out 7 times per 9 innings on the average in the last 30 days. So if you add those together and if you calculate how often or how deep Alec Marsh goes into games, my strikeout total for him comes to 3.7. So he would have to get 5 strikeouts to get the over on this. So I like Alec Marsh under 4.5 strikeouts here. Like I said, just because a team sucks does not mean they strike out a lot. And the Angels are a perfect example of that. They're one of the most plate disciplined teams in the league, despite sucking. Alec Marsh is a really good pitcher. He's got a whip of 1.01. But just because a pitcher is great does not mean he strikes out a lot of people. And Alec Marsh is a good example of that. So I like the Alec Marsh under 4.5. The book has to make this 4.5 because if they made it 3.5, they would get tons of money on the over and they might lose that bet. He probably might strike out 4 here, but I doubt he gets to 5. So my best bet for the show is Alec Marsh under 4.5.
Under the 4.5 for Alec Marsh is the player prop best bet. Angels and Royals. That's Tokyo Brandon, WT.buzz/TB. He's got a 5%er rocking this evening. Steve, you want to talk White Sox and Guardians, and I have to shout out our man Adam Trigger, who yesterday was getting destroyed on his video. He was talking about the Chicago White Sox, and when Trig's on a video talking about the White Sox, you usually just know he's taking the 1.5. They won outright yesterday. So leave the points at the door for our man Adam Trigger yesterday. White Sox and Guardians, Steve, let folks know what you have rocking up this weekend over at WagerTalk and tell us how we should be betting this game.
Yeah, going to get to a free play here in the American League in just a moment for Friday. I know we're talking baseball, but let's not forget about the NBA playoffs. I'm number one this year in the NBA. I'm number one all time. The history of the website. Nobody's ever won more units in the history of WagerTalk.com combined in the NBA. Number one again this year, and the playoffs have been fantastic. I've got 3 best bets tonight on Friday, and then 2 best bets tomorrow on Saturday. So that's right, 5 NBA best bets for Friday and Saturday are loaded right now for my clients. Pretty confident that's going to be the deepest 2-day card I have the rest of this season because we only have 1 or 2 games each day going forward. So yes, if you've been waiting to get on board, it's not too late. I have a 3-for-1 special for Friday, a 2-for-1 special for Saturday, NBA only. Also have a baseball best bet tonight. So I highly recommend a direct subscription. And this weekend is your last chance to buy 7, get 11. That works out to just 9 days for all sports, NBA and baseball. All 4 best bets tonight, all the best bets tomorrow on Saturday, Sunday. Buy 7, get 11 for just $99. Or if you're serious about taking a consistent investment approach like we've talked about, use promo code SM365 on the 1-year special, and you get an instant $800 discount. So once again, the 1-year all access, instant $800 discount with SM365. Check out the daily free plays also, Steve Merril, WagerTalk.com. Speaking of free plays, let's look at that free baseball play tonight in the American League. Going to take a look at the Chicago White Sox, a team that started 3-22 straight up, but they've gone 7-6 straight up their last 13. Back-to-back wins. They've won 4 of their last 6. We see this with teams in baseball. Look, the worst team in baseball is normally going to always win at least 50 games or more. Even the A's last year, as bad as they were, got to 50 wins. So when the White Sox were 3-22, we knew they had at least 40-plus wins to come, but you got to wait to see it before you start trusting this team. And I think we can trust them right now. They're in decent form here. They're playing 500 baseball plus over the past week. And I also like the fact they got Garrett Crochet on the mound, who's an up-and-coming rising star. They think this guy could be really good in the future. He's a converted reliever in the minors. His minor league numbers very mediocre, 4.4 ERA, but keep in mind he was a reliever at times. Now he's a starter. His big league numbers, 80 games, 3.6, but once again, because he was a reliever for a while. Now that he's been a starter, he's pitching better, and I think there's some upside in my pitching projection numbers favor them tonight, and we get them at a basic pick-em price. So I do think there's some value with the Chicago White Sox tonight on Friday.
I'm worried, Steve, if we did like the pull off the mask thing, like Scooby-Doo, Trigger would be under there being like, I told you it's always the White Sox, because it's rare that you're going to find people making cases for the White Sox. But to Steve's point, you know, this is a buy sign time. So hey, the White Sox is the breakdown best bet for Steve Merril. We appreciate you both coming on here. Guys, before we shut things down, we have 2 orders of business to get to. One is a baseball game, and one is the chat wants story time from Tokyo Brandon. I warned them it's not going to end well, but they want it. So we'll start with the baseball game and get your thoughts, Steve, here on the Cubs and the Pirates. The chat since the beginning of the show has just been asking, how can you talk me into laying money with the Pirates right now? I know the Cubs are off an absolutely abysmal hitting night. I think they mustered up just 1 hit the other evening, 15 strikeouts, 3-0 setback against the Padres. This one for me is a stay away. I don't really want to bet on either of these teams, but the chat wants us to bring it up. So any thoughts about this one for you, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to play the side. And if you have to play the game, let's play the total. Under
True.
7. This is the lowest total of the season, along with that Reds-Giants game. And they're low for a reason. This is something else that Ralph Michaels and I have talked about for years in many sports. The lowest totals go under, the highest totals go over. In fact, a couple years ago, Ralph did some research for me on 6.5s. And 7 of the previous 8 years, if you'd blindly played every under 6.5 or lower, you'd made money. Now, I don't think we've seen a 6.5. And viewers, let me know if I'm missing one. But once again, this game would be the lowest total of the season at 7, and I'm looking to play under, and both offenses are ice cold.
All right, Brandon, you're going to get the final word here before we shut things down, because the chat has relentlessly asked me. Tokyo Brandon teased it at the beginning. You said you had a flight story. I mean, keep it tight here, man. But they're asking, the over-under is this story about too many edibles that you ate before the flight, or is it on over-under happy endings for you, or mile-high action for you on the flight? Either of those cashing? I'm just telling you what the chat's asking, TB.
So those of you who had a gay couple in a fight next to me on the flight, you cashed your bet. So I get on the flight. There are 2 very large African-American men sitting across the aisle from me, right next to me here. And when I first got on, you nod to the guys around you. It's an 11-hour flight. So you got to be nice to the people around you. And then straight into the flight, the guy next to me has a towel over his head and he's sobbing, weeping loudly like that. I hear him mumbling something like, how can you do that to your boyfriend on an 11-hour flight? So I had to listen to two very large African-American gay couple spatting next to me for 11 hours coming from Los Angeles to Tokyo. So that's my story. Never happened before. Never had a happy ending on an airplane either. But anyways, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
You guys asked for it. You guys asked for it. I mean,
Didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, that you could cash all of the no bets.
Oh, yeah. That was a money line underdog parlay right there.
Now you see, Steve, why I usually.
The thing is,
ahead,
I mean,
This is why we need to pre-tape these stories, Dan.
The thing is, I did not have those two guys pegged as a couple. Let's put it that way. They looked like
they apparently weren't anymore.
Yeah, they were a couple, but when they got in the air, and they weren't afterwards. But now you guys know why we keep. Go ahead,
if Brandon had been in the center seat between the two of them, would have been the only thing that made that story even better for 11 hours.
Yeah, exactly. and Eric points out, I got a story for you. It's called This One Time at Band Camp. All right, guys, we got to shut it down here. Shut it down here for the day. Please. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Shout out to the chat. We greatly appreciate you. Shout out to these guys as well. If you enjoy the content, whether it's the baseball winners or the absolutely out of left field stories we get from some of our cappers on here, that's why we appreciate you hitting that like button, hitting that bell. We greatly appreciate it. We have plenty more info coming your way. We got the NBA tip-off show still to come here on a Friday. Wager Talk Last Call, some live programming, and all of those great single game videos that we're rocking around the clock. We appreciate you. Shout out to these guys. Shout out to you in the chat. And we'll see you next time here. And if you want some more info, you don't have to go far. Check out the video on your screen right now. Keep getting all that info you need to cash on all the sports you love. That's what we do here at Wager Talk TV. Best of luck, everybody. We'll see you next time.